Crazy damn Canadians. Cam, how are you?
I'm over 50 and still alive, so I'm very proud of that.
And I just want to say one thing because we haven't mentioned this yet. First of all, it is awesome to have you here, Cam. But our listeners and our viewers, that intro theme song, it's from a local Prince George band called Studio 720. These guys rock.
Oh, they're very good.
Absolute, brilliant musicians. So I just wanted to start this podcast by giving them a shout out. And now let's get into it.
Yeah, I guess I've known Cam. First of all, I'm going to own this, that I've known Cam since I DJ'd in some of the bars that he owned back when I was 19 years old. So we have a long history, and so I'm excited to ask you some of the questions about your history because I've heard a lot of these answers, but I think it's important we bring them out because there's a couple notable things about Cam. He's a philanthropist. You've donated almost $800,000 in Prince George to causes near and dear to you and causes that you've just said, Dave, how do I spend my money on charity? You've also owned 20 some odd liquor licenses. How many liquor licenses have you had?
Around not 20, about 9.
9, okay. Yeah. I'm not sure where I heard the 20 from, but anyways, you've had bars and beer stores and golf centers and
nightclubs and
you've done it all. But so the first question I'm going to ask is just give us a little bit about your history of how you guys ended up, and it was with your family. I know your mom was a big part of the business and your dad too. Give us a little bit of history on where it all started.
Excuse me. My dad moved to Prince George from Vancouver in 1972, and he bought the National Hotel. And then about 6 months after that, my mother met him for different reasons of having to go down there and get her ex-husband out of there. And my dad fell in love with my mother from afar. And after my mother left her husband that was not a very nice guy, about 3 months later, they hooked up, and I went with the package deal. I went from pumping gas or working in the bush to winning the lottery and owning bars and nightclubs.
And what was Prince George like back then? Because you always hear the stories of 60s and 70s, Prince George just being this boom town where people came, and it wasn't a matter of how long you're staying. It was a matter of when are you leaving?
It was growing. The money was flowing. The fun was happening. It was the Wild West. There was no liquor rules like there are now, and it was just a complete blast. It was just so much fun. You could dance on the table in your underwear. You could do whatever you wanted, and it was just a great place to be.
So how old were you when you started working in the bars? Like, were you under 18 or over 18 when you started helping out?
I started helping out when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
I was picking up paper in the parking lot, and at that time, the liquor industry was closed on Sunday because Expo 86 hadn't happened yet. And once Expo 86 happened, the bars on the Expo site were open on Sundays, so they had to let the rest of the province be open on Sundays. So I morphed from there into a desk clerk. I never took a holiday off. I never took Christmas off. I worked every birthday because of the stat holidays. Our family would let the staff, they'd still get paid for the holiday, but they wouldn't get paid double time. So I was a chambermaid for a lot of years, helped my mom upstairs in the hotel, and that's one of the books I wrote. It's called The People Upstairs.
Yeah, and for our listeners, Cam has 3 books that he's written. The People in the Hood, which is more commonly known in Prince George as the VLA.
Yes.
It was actually created as the Veterans Land Act. It's land that was given to soldiers returning from the war so that they could build homes at an affordable price. And something that we're going to bring up later, people in Dominican Republic, and that's the 3rd one. And
I finished my 4th one. I guess I just be straightforward as always. So quite a few years ago at the National Hotel, I was bartending, and these undercover cops were doing a sting operation, and they were trying to catch people selling drugs and that, which at the time I was not, but they wound up taking down a bunch of people out of the Columbus, but they kept drinking in the National. And I'd seen them about 8 times, and they kept asking me, do you know where I can get anything? Do you know where I can get anything? I'm like, no, I don't know where you can get anything. So the 8th or 10th time I saw them, they were super hungover, and they did not look like cops, man. They had to have done something wrong somewhere else and then be forced into trying to bring down these other people. So I said, yeah, I've got something for you. And I went in the back and I rolled a joint, and I came out and I gave it to him. I said, smoke that, you'll feel better. And the guy goes, do you want me to pay for it? Do you want me to give me any money? I'm like, no, I've seen you in here. You've dropped thousands of dollars. I go, it's only a joint. Don't worry about it. A few days later, they come back and charge me with distribution, or however you want to put it, and for one joint. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to get me to roll over on whoever in Prince George so they could bust more people. So I wind up going down to the police station. They hadn't handcuffed me yet or anything, and I get down to the police station, and they're sitting across the table from me, and they say, you know, my parents were in Hawaii at the time. And they said, hey, we know who your parents are. Your dad's in the hotel association. You don't want him to hear about this, but if you give us a few names, we'll let you go. And I said, oh, you guys want some names? And he says, yeah. And I said, why don't you try Heather Sadler Jenkins? Holy crap, that was the right answer, but it was the wrong answer, man. He reached over by the table, grabbed me by the back of the hair, and slammed me face first into a filing cabinet.
No.
So then when my parents got back from Hawaii, my dad, something major always happened every single time they went away. It just something major happened. So we get to fifth and I was speaking, Mom goes into the Mr. G's, and Dad looks over me, he says, so what happened this time? And I said, I got charged with one joint of marijuana. And he looks at me and he goes, one joint? He goes, you gotta be kidding me. So we went, and I got a lawyer named Dennis Archambault, and he suggested I go to the Haven. And the Haven is basically a nut house on Gabriel Island. So I went there for a month, for 30 days, so that the doctors could write a letter saying that I've changed my ways. And I went there, and that's what I wrote the fourth book on. And I'm telling you, the stories are out of this world. And in the end, the doctors wrote a letter, and the Crown dropped the charges. So it did work. But I spent a month in a nut house. And I was the sanest person there, man. I tell you, it was freaking unbelievable.
How old were you when this happened?
I had to be 20, 21, 22, something like that.
I can't believe I haven't heard this story all the time we've hung out. But I got to say, I wonder if this is a common tactic. I owned a nightclub in 2006. It was Fire. It's where Remax is, downtown Prince George now. And I was innocent of doing anything wrong because I used my mom's retirement money to open it. And so it was her life savings that she lent me to do my dream of opening a club. And one day the RCMP came into the club, said, we want to talk to you privately. And they actually told me, we know that your parents are stand-up citizens in Prince George, and you have two choices right now. Either you start snitching on people who do drugs who come into your business, or we're going to go to the media in Prince George and tell them that you are in cahoots with the drug dealers, embarrassing you and your parents in front of all of their friends. The only mistake they made was they didn't realize my mom was doing the books with two other people, including the accountant, one door over, and the door was open, and they didn't realize she was there. And my mother stood up, walked over, and said, we just heard everything. And they went white, and they just walked out of the building. And then a sergeant, I won't mention his name, came back and said, we owe you one. If you ever need a favor, just ask. Yeah. I'm sorry that happened to you. You've got us. And I was like, I couldn't believe it happened. But your story makes so much sense because they did the same thing to me, and I was innocent of doing anything.
There's a lot of parallels in those stories. Cam, is that how you met Dave in the industry?
Yeah.
In the nightclubs?
Yeah, I guess that'd be pretty much it.
Do you remember the actual instance where you two met?
I think I bought you a shooter.
He walked into, I walked into the Iron Horse on my one day off a week. I was working at the Monk Bar. And I knew he was the owner, but I didn't think he'd talk to me because you always see people who own businesses and you think they're going to be snobby. He walked up to me, he goes, hey, you're the DJ from the Monk. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to kick me out now? I was like, just waiting to be kicked out or told to take a hike. And he goes, bought you a shot. It thoroughly impressed me. Right there, I was like, okay, I like this guy because that never would have happened. Adriano would not have bought someone a shot. He held his pennies too tight.
And just a side note.
I graduated with Adriano. He's a nice guy, but he's a tight businessman.
Yeah.
And as an aside, I have to say, in the history of Prince George bars, in terms of names, the Iron Horse has to be the coolest of all time.
It was, I would go as far as Saskatchewan, and people knew about it. It was just stunning. And the wildest part is, depending on what mood I was in, I could either go rock it out at the Iron Horse with everybody, or I could go down to the hood. And those people down there were very, very nice as well, but it was just a different atmosphere, and it was just different. But the Iron Horse was a phenomenal success story, man. When we switched over to Bucket Beer and the lineups and the people, and it was beyond fun. I feel sorry for people nowadays that couldn't experience that, the 10 or 15 bars downtown and going from bar to bar, and it was just so much fun. Like, whoa, it was just hair straight back and hang on.
Could you imagine just having a time machine, or even just being able to see some footage of what the Iron Horse looked like in 1999 on a Saturday night, and see everyone dancing and face to face? Like, now during COVID-19, that seems like 200 years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago.
I said to my kids one day, I said, do you realize we used to go into a bar with 400 people and not one person had a phone?
Yeah.
If you wanted to get laid, you had to have some moves, you had to have game, you had to get out there and dance, you had to do it. The only phone was behind the bar, and you'd phone there and go, hey, is Dave there? And they'd look around the bar and it was just packed. They go, I don't know, you got to come down. Click. Right? If you wanted to get laid, you had to dance left or dance right. You didn't have to swipe left or swipe right, man. It was a totally different, she was a totally different time.
But to be fair, you're probably the only person in Prince George that from those days has the same haircut. The most notable feature on you, for people who are just listening, is Cam has a famous mullet.
That's funny.
Which he has had since. What age did you grow the mullet? And why haven't you cut it off?
In high school, I had short hair and most people had long hair. And I just didn't want to be like everybody else. And then as the trend, when everybody started cutting their hair, I started growing mine longer. My dad hated it. He hated long hair. But we agreed on a compromise. As long as I kept it tidy up front, business up front, party in the rear, he was fine with it. And then it morphed. So then I like the fact that people remember me because of my size and my hair, and I really enjoy the notoriety and however that comes across, but I'll never cut it off, man.
Yeah, it's just your identity, I think.
That's right,
becomes is a fair way to say it. And it is fun when you live in a community to automatically have a very quick thing to start a conversation, even if it's the joke, and if you're willing to be the butt of the joke. I mean, I intentionally, since I shaved my head, wear toques all the time. What's my favorite toque? Bright pink. My bright pink toque. Why? It's great fun. It shows that I'm lighthearted and it starts the conversation. So I get that and I resonate with that.
And how lucky are you to live in a community like Prince George that actually has the street name Mullet? Is that your street? Is that where you live?
No, but I have the Cameron Street Bridge.
Oh,
there you go.
I was all happy when they built that at the end of First Avenue because our bar was on First Avenue.
So I want to ask now one of the first tougher questions we're going to ask you. One of the things recently, as we were preparing for this podcast, we started looking up different things people were questioning about. And one of the things people said is that you tend to own a bar or bars in lower economic areas. And so what they're talking about was there was the First Leader Party Shack, which was down in the VLA. I found that question offensive. Like, if we have a bar in St. Lawrence Heights, then people can drink at it and that's fine. But people who don't make enough money don't qualify to be allowed to have a beer after work. And it's considered infringing upon them or persecuting them or punishing them or baiting them like they're not going to go the extra couple blocks. But having a community bar is bad for them. Good if you have enough money, though. So I'm going to say right now, I totally think it's BS, but you have some insight on what those people and what that bar was like, and you said it to me and I thought that was great. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
The First Leader is one of the funnest places on the face of the planet. People come from all over the city. They would come from all over the city there to party, and then the people from the VLA, they would come in and blend, and it doesn't matter where they live. These people are incredible. I've had the most kindest acts you've ever seen from the people down there. I know them all by name. They're in a different spot in life, but they're happy. That's what they aspire to, and they're just happy to cruise through life like that. And the bar, itself was just a fun place, and everybody came, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, so you don't feel like, in your opinion, that it was something worse or better. It was just the bar, and I mean, you almost described it as family for a lot of those people.
I know everybody by heart. The people shoot straight from the hip. They're not liars. They're not schemers. They don't want nothing from you. They're just down to earth. One day I was in front of the pub one day, and I pull up, and this guy that I know by name, he's pushing across a shopping cart across the parking lot. And I go, hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? And he gets just beside me, and he stops. And he goes, Cam. He starts rubbing through the shopping cart, and he goes, I got something here for you. I'm like, well, what's that? And he reaches in, and from under the shopping cart, he pulls out a thing of windshield washer fluid, right? And he says, I'm not going to be needing this. You should have it.
Aw.
And I tell you, to this day, I know the guy, and it touches my heart. I'm unloading stuff. Everybody wants to help. It's until you've been down there and met the people and enjoyed them and loved them, you just don't understand it. It's just how it is. The hood gets tarnished for obviously some negative things, but I would say 70% of the people have hearts of gold. Hearts of gold. I mean, there's the other 30% that don't, but the majority of them are just incredible people. And I've been beat up a little with the you made money off the backs of the people in the hood. Like you said, Dave, if I didn't sell them the alcohol, that they would never drink it. No, they're gonna venture farther to find it. It's just, I provided a service in that area of town.
Yeah.
And kindness stems from all areas and walks of life, and the kindness that manifested and that you witnessed in your establishments, is that what was the propensity or the motivation for you to start doing all your philanthropy work?
Yes. Yeah, I want to help out. One of the things that's the cutest thing ever is I do a ton of work with the Salvation Army, and I directly help look after the food truck. And the food truck will come and park directly across from the First Leader in the Child Development Center parking lot. And it drives me nuts because some of the people, they use the garbage can, but some people don't. So they throw the garbage on the ground, which drives me insane. But then I support the food truck to bring it there to help the people. So it's just a way of the world, right?
One thing that actually really inspired me, and Cam, we hadn't really met before this year through Dave here. When the United Way Tree of Lights campaign started in December, they were looking for donations, and they had their campaign in full effect. And you stepped up to the plate right away with $1,000 donation, and that helped the campaign reach their goal of $30,000. And one of the initiatives that they had was a calendar from Bill Campbell, and this calendar helped raise over $1,000 as well, thanks to the team at Canadian Western Bank. So just a quick aside, I want you to have one. This from
cool.
Bill
Excellent.
Campbell. Yeah,
excellent. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's funny. I have no rhyme nor reason to what I do. I'll be driving along in front of, I think the last time I was in front of Spruceland Shopping Center, and I thought to myself, I think it's time I gave away some more money. And then I instantly phoned Dave up and I go, hey, I think it's time we gave away some more cash. What do you think we should do? And then he orchestrates it all and we put it all together. But it just comes at different times. I mean, Bill from the Sally Ann, he gets a hold of me all the time, and I help out with and it's not just me, it's my wife, it's our family, it's our businesses, it's the people of Prince George working through me to try and help. But I do a lot of work with the Salvation Army. We did the back to school programs. We donated the waiting room there. We just do a ton with the Salvation Army.
Yeah, and shout out to Bill Glasgow. What a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Terrific human being.
He's awesome. I love Bill.
And you have a very unique way of distributing checks during COVID-19 times. And I'm looking at a hockey stick that's right behind you, and there is a little bit of history behind that hockey stick. Do you mind informing our guests?
My nephew from the Yukon, he came to my house one day and he brought me this stick and a huge Budweiser sign. And this stick right there that he brought me, which is one of his prized possessions, is the stick that Marty McSorley hit Brashear in the head with. And you can see that McSorley signed it, and you can actually see the chip on the stick where it whacked Brashear in the head. But yeah, that's the hockey stick, and he gave that to me, and I proudly display that in my. I got quite a nice rec room, but that's one of my prized possessions, but he brought it down for me just out of the blue.
And obviously, you're a huge Canucks fan. You're wearing a Dan Hamhuis T-shirt.
Yeah. Oh.
And if you have a chance, listen to Brian Burke's audiobook or read his book. And he talks about the 30 years of being a GM and an employee in the National Hockey League. And he has some great stories because he was the general manager of the Canucks when that incident happened with Marty McSorley and Donald Brashear, as well as when Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore incident happened. So, I mean, those are two devastating incidences that happened during the NHL, and he was there as GM for both of them.
Yeah, Dan Hamhuis is larger than life. He's from Smithers, and he's a great northern product. And Tammy and I were at Horsting Farms in Cache Creek there. You know where the farm is there?
Great sandwiches.
And Tammy loves going in there, so we pull in there so she can go and do her thing. And Hamhuis is there with his kids and his wife. And he wasn't no fancy hockey player at that exact moment, man. It was like he was herding cats with his kids. It was so funny. It was just so cute to see the big, strong hockey player was trying to deal with these children. It just killed me.
And not to get too far off topic, but could Northern BC have asked for a more classier, better human being as an NHL player? He has to be the most famous NHLer who's called Northern BC home, and just what a phenomenal human being.
He's directly responsible for actually, I believe, helping the Prince George Cougar prospects want to come to the North and play. Because he can do it, they can do it.
So you've donated, and I referenced it at the start of the podcast, you tallied it up probably around $800,000. Why?
I guess the shorter answer is because we could. You have a great life off of Prince George and you want to give back. You just want to make the world a better place, and you have the means, and donating all that money, it never slowed down our lifestyles or nothing, and it made it better. I mean, we did the fireworks for so many years and just everything. So that's the reason why we have the ability to do it, and the people should step up and do stuff.
One question I'd like to know is, if you had to guess of that $800,000, how much of it, I know this is going to be a tough thing to figure out, but how much of it were people aware of, and how much do you think of it people weren't aware of?
I'd say half and half. I was talking to my accountant one day, and I brought up, we had obviously done a whole bunch before this, but I said to him, so when I donate something, you get like 50% back, tax break, right? And he's like, nope, you only get 13% back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And I didn't realize it at that point. And he looked at me and he said, are you doing it because you want the tax break or you want to make the world a better place? And I said, well, obviously I want to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's where I influence people who do philanthropy with me, though, because I'm sneakier than that. I do everything as advertising, because advertising is 100%. And so I always try to turn donations into advertising dollars. And that's one of the reasons why I try to help my friends make things a bit more public. It's turned into something where I'm now utilized as a go-between, where people have money and they want to get it out. Well, they call me, so it's not even always my money, but I end up getting credit for a lot of it. So as a result, I'm like, I don't want credit for other people's donations all the time. It doesn't feel great. So I've started using people like Cam saying, look, it's your money. I'll help distribute it. And I've got this idea, but let's make sure your business gets recognition for it. But even that ends up sometimes where you get called out or attacked as you're trying to do this. And I discovered, there's no perfect way to do philanthropy except to kind of just ignore anybody who criticizes it.
Yeah, I've been in business for a lot of years. I learned a lot from my parents, but also from you, Dave. I've learned a lot. I have. You've taught me a lot of stuff. And I found the best way to insulate yourself from a lot of the negativity is with a flip phone. If you have a flip phone and no social media, way harder for trolls to get a hold of you.
Well, Cam, I'll tell you one thing. I feel like you're ahead of the trend. I think there's going to be a lot of people who have addictions to technology, especially social media, that are going to be regressing back to a flip phone, because smartphones, they're time vampires. They take up so much time in the average human being's day, and I'm not immune to it as well. I find myself always reaching for my phone. It's always within a meter's distance, and so I think you're ahead of the curve there. One thing that drives me absolutely crazy is when people criticize others who donate. And it happens quite readily, more than we'd like to believe, where if somebody's donating, sometimes there's an automatic response from people saying they're doing it for the tax break.
Yeah.
You know, she's doing it for the recognition. He's doing it just for the publicity. And even if that is the case, so what? They're still donating to good causes, helping out great people and great nonprofit organizations or events. So what? Who cares what their motives are? They're donating. Let's applaud that and focus on the awesome.
Yeah, and it's just the way I see it. I don't let that slow me down at all, the negativity. I mean, it sucks. You wish everybody look at you in a positive light, but if you regressed, you wouldn't do anything.
I think the important thing is to recognize that what you see someone doing publicly, though, you're assuming that they do everything publicly. You know, that's exactly it. How much does Dave Mathis do publicly? Probably 25% of what I do. Most of the time, if I make a donation of my own money, I don't post it. That would look silly, especially with how many times I get asked and how often I cut checks. Just my checks are far smaller than yours, but I don't post those. I just post other people's money when I'm donating that because I like to make sure that they get recognition. That's my personal belief that they should build their business up, help them become more successful. They're going to give me more money to help more people. And I like that cycle.
The only time I've reached through social media is when I deal with you.
Yeah.
That's the only time.
So you spend next to no time on social media.
Zero.
You
Zero.
are...
The other day I was thinking, and I actually had the thought that you just said. I was holding my phone and I thought to myself, I have a better quality of life than most people because I'm not on that thing. I'm not driven by likes. I'm not driven by shares. I'm driven by nothing. I have no Facebook account. I have no Twitter. I have nothing. And I mean nothing. Between my businesses in town right now, we have about 70 employees. I do quite well, and I run it all with a flip phone. And if I don't hear your voice when you're trying to book off sick, you ain't getting time off because you're not going to text me or nothing. You know what I mean? I want to hear your voice. I want to hear if you're slurring your words. But yeah, no. And that exact thought, Scott, was I thought I had a better quality of life because I'm not a slave to that thing. I was without I've backed up my flip phones now. I have some brand new ones in the box for when they go down. I was without one for about a week and I had to use Tammy's phone, which she has a smartphone. And it was like carrying a brick. It was awkward. It was big in my pocket. I didn't like it. No, I totally agree with you. I'm not a slave to social media. I do nothing on it. Only time I go near social media is with Dave.
Well,
only time.
We had Jim Good on the podcast last week, just a phenomenal human being, the founder of Good Sir Nature Park. And he has never been on the internet before. He's never been on social media. He doesn't own a cell phone. And he is the happiest human being I have ever met in the last 25 years. And there's a direct correlation between the time that he's not spending in this digital online world. He is 100% physically present in every conversation that he has throughout the days. And it's very remarkable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I get so much more done. I just go nonstop all day long getting stuff done. And I don't pick up I call this the bad news phone. Because whenever it rings, it's one of my businesses. They have a problem and I have to put out the fire. And other than that, it might be Dave, and that's about it.
Well, there's another tactic that Joe Rogan, probably the most famous podcaster in the world, uses, and he actually puts all of his social media apps into one folder on his smartphone, and it's called Addict. And in big capitalized letters, Addict, with an exclamation mark at the end. And he says just seeing that word actually prevents him from going into the folder and mindlessly scrolling on social media channels for the next hour. And we opened up this podcast with you mentioning, Cam, that it was the Wild Wild West back in the 70s in the Prince George. And I would take that equivalent of the Wild Wild West in Prince George in the 1970s. And I would say that's modern day Twitter with just craziness and people out of control in that kind of digital aspect.
And today with the technology, people can hide behind a keyboard. They can hide behind a phone. Back in the day, you couldn't hide behind nothing. If you were a dickhead, you get called out. You get drug out. There's no way you could hide behind a keyboard. And you had to carry yourself totally different. You couldn't be a... Anyhow, we won't go that far.
Speaking about that, actually, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. So let's go to the Red Book. The people of the Dominican. So you and Tammy you got engaged, you get married, you're going to go on a honeymoon, And she has some medical conditions. Warm weather helps her. So you decide,
fibromyalgia,
Yeah, you decide we're going to go to the Dominican Republic for our honeymoon, which lots of people do. And you get there and you're hanging out. So you owned a bar in the Dominican. How did that happen? Why did you buy a bar there?
Well, how it happened was there was a golf course that had just opened. It was a $70 cab ride there and back, and I'd played it twice before. And on the golf cart, they didn't have the scorecards yet. They just had a photocopied piece of paper with the holes on it. The third time I went with a Calgary couple, a father-son team, and we shared the cab ride, and we went there. And we were on the 10th hole. I was playing one of the best games of my life. I was 3 over at the turn, and there was a scorecard on the golf cart. I read it when we first started. On the back, it says, course designed and built by PB Dye. And, okay, so no biggie. On the 10th hole, there's 3 of us playing, and this guy drives up on a golf cart with his golf clubs on the back. And before he's coming, I said to the couple, I said, hey, you guys mind if he joins us? And they said, no, of course not. So he drives up, and before I could say anything, he goes, hi, I'm PB Dye. And I go, you're somebody pretty important around here then. And he goes, what do you mean? And he's a super nice guy. And I go, your name's on the back of the scorecard. And he goes, yeah, I built the course. And he goes, I just had the head greenskeeper double mow the greens. I'm playing with Bill Clinton in 45 minutes. And that was the end of our conversation, and he shook our hands and he drove off. Anyhow, I shot 11 over on the back. My brain was just scrambled. The best golf game of my life was gone. And so we get back to the clubhouse, and there's each president has Secret Service that are with them for life. They always have a detail. So I said to the father-son team, I said, hey, you guys want to stick around here and get some pictures of Slick Willie when he comes back? And the dad says, you can get pictures of Bill Clinton anytime. And I go, you're from Calgary, I'm from Prince George. When are we going to run into Bill Clinton again? So they said no, and they were getting in the cab to head back. So I had no choice but to go with him. So I said, hold on a second, I'm going to go talk to the Secret Service. And the guy, he says, you can't do that. I said, what are you going to do, shoot me? So I run up, because 3 or 4 of the Secret Service go with Clinton on the golf course, and then the other ones are up top waiting for him to come back. So I go up there and I go, hey guys, don't think I'm weird, but I watched special on PBS. I think what you do is amazing. You look after the presidents and that. And they were super nice. And the one guy looks at me and he goes, where are you from? I said, Canada. And he goes, don't tell Clinton. And I go, why is that? And he says, he frickin' hates Canadians. I'm like, no way. And then they all start laughing like a son of a bitch. And he's like, just kidding. I'm like, you jerk. It was so funny, right? So
you thought like NAFTA trade negotiations went wrong during that time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm in cuffs or whatever. So then we pile in the taxi. We head back to the resort, and I say to Tammy, I go, do you want to have a quick shower? And we'll go back and see if we get some pictures of Slick Willie. And my wife, Dave's met her. She's, anyhow, the most incredible female on the face of the planet. She says, yeah, let's go. So we jump in the cab, another $70 to go there and see what's going to happen. We get to the front gate of the golf course, and 2 Dominican Secret Service are there, and the gate's down. And we pull up, and he says, sorry, the president's in here golfing. We can't let you in. And I said, PB Dye told me to come back. And I hadn't even met him. I just met him on the 10th hole. And the Dominican Secret Service goes, okay, and lifts the gate up.
No.
Yes! And we drive in. So then we're there, and there was a lady there that I hadn't seen with the other Secret Service, and she's standing there. She's a nice-looking lady, blonde lady, well-proportioned, and she's sitting there waiting, and I went up to her, and I'm being myself, and I said, I won't get my picture with Clinton. I bet you will. And she goes, actually, I'm head of this chapter of the Secret Service. And I stand back, and I'm like, what? And I look, and I see her pin right there, and then I look under her little coat, and I can see her weapon. Oh, yeah, and then just Slick Willie showed up with PB Dye. And Slick Willie's waiting to get in. The whole motorcade's there, and Slick Willie's talking away. And my wife and myself are standing about 20 feet apart. And Bill Clinton's talking to these people, and he actually leans over. I have the pictures here. And he checks out Tammy. He's looking her up and down. I'm like, quit looking at my wife. Right? So then he gets in the motorcade and leaves. And I said to the young gentleman working there, I said, "Where's PB Dye?" And he said, "Well," and I said, "Well, here's $20." And he took me to the VIP patio. And I said to PB, "Hey, can you sign a golf ball for me? I own a sports bar back in Canada. I'd love to put it on the wall for, what happened here today." And he goes, "Why don't you sit down and join me?" And so we sat down and joined him with the head golf pro. Then his dad, Pete Dye, who is one of the premier golf course builders of the world, in Casa de Campo, which is right beside San Pedro de Macorís, is Casa de Campo. And there's 4 courses on there that his dad has built. He says, "Why don't you come play Teeth of the Dog with me?" And I'm like, "What?" So then we went there and we played Teeth of the Dog with him. I parred the first 5 holes. Oh, it was just spectacular. So then after that meeting, my wife has fibromyalgia. I wanted to get someplace warm for the winter so she would feel better. And I thought, why not try this? So I got a hold of PB's realtor, his lawyer, and that, and we went for it. I just stepped right off the edge of the bridge.
Right. When you say you went for it, so you ended up buying a nightclub. You own nightclubs in Canada. You know how to operate nightclubs. So you decided to buy a nightclub is what you were looking for?
Well, in the Dominican, it's a mafia-run type idea. You have to get your foot in the door, whether it's taxis, fishing, water sports, bars, anything. You have to partner with somebody. So through the realtor, we found a club that was smaller and it was struggling. And I came in with some coin and we just blew it out and we turned it into a massive nightclub, 400-seat nightclub.
Right. And of course, part of the controversy in Prince George now is people are unaware of how stuff works in other countries. And in many nations on this planet, prostitution is not dealt with the same way as it is here. Here, you've got to go hide in an alley and have no medical and you have no help. And we put our prostitutes in alleys. In the Dominican, it's legal. It's one of the countries. And so you went there and you wanted to buy a nightclub so you could have a business like what you have here. But my understanding is that comes part and parcel with it. Can you describe that?
We went there not at all wanting to deal with girls. We didn't. We just wanted to get set up and make some money over there. But that being said, there's around 100,000 people in the country in that trade. And when you go to, and I've been in Puerto Plata, Higüey, Santo Domingo, all over. And excuse me, it's a way of the world over there, and it's completely different. Like the nightclub, we didn't get the girls never gave us any money. If the nightclub got a cut from what happened, the tourist paid for it. Once a month, there's a bus that goes around, and there was 2 clubs on that end of the island, ours and another one. And they would come and all the girls would get on the bus. They'd go into Higüey. They all get tested. They all come back. They have a little card for that month with the date on it. And we were there for 18 months and we never had one problem with any type of disease or nothing. So you can view it totally, stick your head in the stand like the ostrich on Bugs Bunny. You remember the ostrich?
Yeah.
You old enough to remember the ostrich, Scott? Right? He'd stick his head in the sand. And that's just not how it's over there. Before I came here today, I Googled it. 15 countries, it's legal, and everybody's protected and it's clean. So I'll just leave it there. We never went there for that reason.
Yeah, and I can hear that you're defensive, and the reason you're defensive is because when you wrote the book, you wanted to write stories and you wanted to make sure they were funny and engaging. You were writing down the craziness and the wildness, and you're a shoot from the hip kind of guy. So I understand that. But when it came out, automatically the social media warriors, or otherwise more affectionately known as Karens now, immediately just started saying, you're someone you're a pimp.
Yeah.
And I guess it was important to me just to point out that sometimes people just make assumptions very quickly on social media based upon a caption they've read. And there's a way bigger story behind it.
Yeah.
There's way more information you're forgetting. And I thought to myself, what better opportunity to say, here's a story that people are commenting on right now, small segment of the population getting up in arms. But it's not the whole story, and there's way more to it. And again, just like the people in the hood saying, people in the VLA shouldn't have the right to have a pub, a neighborhood pub, like you do in College Heights. People in Canada say, no, it's totally wrong to have legalized prostitution and use our value system. Let's just keep them in the alleys here. Or let's make it completely illegal, which forces them into the alleys. And I resonated with you about what you guys were doing. That turned into, though, now leaving that part behind, you've got these interesting stories. You run into someone who says, I'm fascinated by these stories. Let's turn this into a TV show. Explain that to us.
Well, at the end of the Red Book, the Dominican book, I had sold we had decided. Okay, so I looked after the nightclub, and Julio, who I call Snake Number One, he looked after the other part of it. Julio, at the start of the whole thing, was a very nice man and a Christian and didn't drink, when in the end he was the complete opposite. So where we finally parted ways was we were in front of the club one night, and there was 20 of our employees between us, and I was on one side and he was drunk on the other side, and he had his gun out. And he's pointed over top of the crowd, I'm going to effing kill you, you little Canadian, blah, blah, blah. And we're all going back and forth like a schoolyard fight. So then I went home to Tammy and I said, ooh, this is starting to get real colorful. And what we were fighting over, if you can believe this one, is we had a 22-room motel beside the, nothing to do with anything to do with prostitution or nothing. It's just where all the employees lived in that. And 6 of the rooms had ceiling fans in it. And it gets so hot there, man. They have 2 seasons, hot and then stupid hot. And I said to Julio, I said, hey, we got to put fans in each room. It's just like the sweat lodge in there. And he got mad. They're dogs. You treat them like dogs and blah, blah, blah. And then the gun came out and we were going back and forth. So I went home and said to Tammy, we got to get out of here. It's too much for me. I can't deal with the way he is. So then he introduced me to Snake Number 2, which the story is just, I can't even go into it. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So Snake Number 2 gives me 30 grand out of 100,000 for half of the nightclub, and we fly home. And then he screws me out of the other 70. As the plane was taking off the runway, he was already formulating the plan to screw me. So I fought for 2 years. I went back over there with interpreters, machine guns, the army. It was just the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. I'm walking into the courtroom, and a tear starts coming out of the corner of my eye. And I'm a pretty solid, rock solid person. And my wife's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, what am I doing? Like, we're in a foreign country speaking no Spanish, fighting for our lives. So in the end, the 8 charges that were falsified against me were dropped. The judge, I was in a trial. There was 3 judges, 2 ladies behind this big bench, and a guy. And the guy slept through the whole trial. In his chair, he was sound asleep. But at the end of the trial, the 2 women realized that I was getting screwed. They dropped all the charges against me and said to him that he's got to give me my money. The first judge said that because I was in front of the second judges, that the ruling was null and void. Now if I go to the Dominican, I go to jail for 2 years. And that's, it's just all corrupt. So my joke for 17 years was I would write a book, and I'm going to sell it to Hollywood, and I'm going to get my money back, right? And I had to keep this dream alive. I had to come home and tell my mother that I lost $100,000 US, and I can deal with any police force in the world rather than my mother. So I was a very, very rough time. After that, I built Fifth Avenue, and I made the money back so that we could come back up. So 5 years ago, I wrote my 3rd book, People in the Dominican, and I just wrote it because I started these stupid little books to chronicle life so that my kids and my great-grandkids and people afterwards could read what it was like and all the rest of it. So 2 years ago in Palm Springs, there was that's where my wife and myself winter, because I finally got us set up in a warm area for her fibromyalgia. So 2 years ago, we realized there's a Palm Spring Music Festival, and I said to Tammy, I'm going to bring 100 copies of each of my book, and I'm going to go into every high-end hotel bathroom, and I'm just going to leave them everywhere with my business card, and somebody's going to find it, and we're going to take off. And lo and behold, at the resort that we managed to get set up in, it's a 5-star resort, just a stunning place. We couldn't believe it. I bought a lot cheaply. That's the only reason we got in there. And like, there's $2 million Prevost buses and Ferraris and Lambos. It's just done to the nuts. And Chris Nassif, who is a 35-year Hollywood TV movie producer, he was there with his big bus, and just by fluke, we were driving right by him, and he flagged us down. And he said, hey, you want to get together later and have a drink? And Tammy and I really aren't big on meeting new people. And I said, well, we got the dogs. I know where you are. We'll come by maybe, type thing. So I went back to the trailer, and I said, I don't want to be a dickhead, so let's go over and have a drink. So we went over and had a drink, and he said, what do I do for a living? And I said, oh, I mix margaritas. And what do you do for a living? And he was the youngest TV talent agent in Hollywood. His aunt is Barbara Eden. His girlfriend is Natalie Crosby, Bing Crosby's granddaughter. And I said to him, I said, hey, I got these 3 stupid books. I said, either throw them in the garbage and lie to me that you read them or whatever. Natalie reads them and she calls them gold. And then they've written 2 scripts and the show Bible's being done right now. And Richard Brandis, who's another cool guy we met, he's done 70 movies in Hollywood. He's walking them into Netflix. So I literally fell over it.
Wow. And, Netflix, as we all know, is just cleaning up these days, especially when it comes to actual series. And so you could very well become the Canadian Tiger King.
And it's I know that, and you wouldn't believe when that show hit, my phone was ringing off the hook. I saw Tiger King, I thought of you. I saw Tiger King, I thought of you. Tammy and I watched 2 episodes, and that was it. It didn't hook us. But anyhow, that's exactly what Richard Brandis says in all of his interviews. He says it's in the same vein as Tiger King, and I'm like, is that a good thing? But people ate Tiger King up.
Yeah, and I mean, Tiger King's mullet is impressive, but it does not even touch yours.
That's freaking funny. Not funny.
So the show now, obviously COVID hits. I know I've been talking to you for a while. You guys were really getting close to putting something together. Where is it at now? What's happening with it?
It's there. Richard has friends in the Dominican that own hotels there, and he actually said that he has, like you talked about the police in your club, he talked about how he's been extorted over there by the police, and a lot of my stuff resonated with him. So we have the locations to shoot at. He wants to put money into it. A gentleman by the name of Sebastian from the Cirque du Soleil family read the stuff, and he wants to finance the project. And we've got the writers in place. We've got the marketing in place. And now the way the platforms have switched around, it used to be that a big TV star, a big movie star, would never do TV. It was beneath them. But now Apple and Amazon and Netflix are throwing so much money at these people that Reese Witherspoon and everybody, they're all doing it. So they feel that the content is so cool and real that the actors will be lining up to play it, if you can believe it. I can't even believe it.
That's extraordinary stuff, Cam. And you look at before the pandemic rocked our world, there was even this hybrid method of movies coming out that they'd be simultaneously released in theaters and on Netflix. And now, I mean, who's going to movie theaters anymore right now? Like when you can stay safe and in the comfort of your own home and have something on demand, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or Apple. And I think a series like this has the potential to really go viral.
There's so many platforms right now, from Hulu to Crave. They're all chomping at the bit for material. And Richard says with enough material and the new books that I'm doing, he's talking 7 to 10 seasons.
That's crazy.
And they say after 3 seasons, you never have to worry about money ever again. And I know how much good we can do with that. Because, I mean, I have a comfortable life now. If I get dealt a whole bunch of excess coin, I'll just be able to do that much better with it.
And there's some people out there that you just want to see make an extraordinary amount of money. Like there's some people in northern British Columbia that I'm like, oh, I wish they'd win the lottery, because I know that they'd give so much of it back to people who really needed it within our community.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm all about legacy now. I'm all about legacy. I want stuff that people remember you. I have people say, oh, I know you. And I go, do you know old Cameron or do you know new Cameron? Because old Cameron was an animal. But it was my job to whip the bar into a frenzy. The more I whipped the bar into a frenzy, the more money we made. And I haven't drank or done cocaine, which I'm very straightforward about that, for 17 years. So I say, do you know the old Cameron or the new Cameron? And then they either say yes or no. But so I'm very proud of how I've overcome my demons.
So you've been clean for 17 years?
17 years, and
Good for you.
immersed in the industry. And Dave, he's never, I know Dave drank a little bit. That's all I've known he's ever done. But it's nothing. You're in the club and some guy shakes your hand and gives you a gram of blow in your hand as you shake in your hand. Hey, first one's free. There's nothing free about it, man. You do your first gram, you're heading back for an 8 ball, right? There's nothing free about it. But in that liquor industry, it's so prevalent that I lifted myself up out of it through my family and my wife. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. Anybody wants to tear me down. When the story hit the Citizen, there were some trolls on there that were trying to rip me apart because of my past, and I own it. I own it. I'll tell anybody to this day that I was the leader of the animals.
And Dave and I talked about this yesterday on the phone. We're discussing a variety of subjects, but we also were mentioning how that too often people are summed up or analyzed for somebody who they used to be. And guess what? As human beings, we are constantly changing in different people. The same person, whoever Dave was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he's a different person today. That could be 5 months ago. And you should be proud of the person that you're striving to be tomorrow, rather than having trolls online try to evaluate you as somebody that you might have been in the past.
Oh, and that's exactly it. People haven't seen me in 20 years. They still assume I'm face down in a pile of blow and drinking, because that's how people tear you down to lift themselves up.
Yeah, and that's very common. What I was actually commenting on was I've never hidden my past. I owned a DJ service and I owned bars. So I've done everything that was within normal realms for my friends. And I've never denied it, because I always knew if I denied my past, if I denied partying, then someday someone could use it against me. So I've been very public about it to prevent people being able to use it against me in the past. I don't deny anything I've done, including to my mom and dad, who always went like, "Oh, what's wrong with you, kid?" Having said that, how funny it is that I haven't ever been attacked for it. Not one time has anybody ever said, "Oh, Dave Mathis partied this hard when he was in his 20s. All I'm kind of ever get flack for is maybe posting too much on social media and trying to get recognition too much, or something to that effect.
That comes down to transparency for the both of you. When you are transparent and you're not afraid of trying to hide your past, people will resonate with that. But like the old saying goes, hurt people, right? And, if you have, whether they're anonymous or not, the people trying to tear you down and really judging your character, there's no way that you should ever bring yourself down to their level. Recognize that they're probably dealing with their own demons and their own shit in their life. Just focus on how you can strive to be a better person and help others. It's as simple as that.
Pretty straightforward.
I guess we already have to give a warning that this episode has swear words, but Scott just dropped an S-bomb. I am so disappointed in you.
You're right. That did slip. And
you're influencing it poorly, Cam.
The first episode we did, I think I swore 3 times in episode 1. And I had some teachers in the school district reach out saying, "Hey, we wanted to show this podcast to our students, but you have a potty mouth." And I do feel guilty about it, because, we don't need to add swear words to our podcast to try to be cool or whatever. So I do feel bad about that first episode. But at the same time, anything goes in this podcast, and that's the beauty of it. I
try really hard in this situation here not to swear, but I was raised in a bar. I have a complete trucker mouth. The amazing thing is that my wife and myself have pulled no punches with our children. I am an open book with them, and I have a potty mouth, and my kids don't drink, they don't do drugs, they don't swear. People come up to us and they go, "Those are your children?" And I'm like, my sister just said that to me the other day. She goes, "I was thinking," she goes, "I've led a completely pure life, and my children, oh my God, and look at yours." She goes, "Why is that fair?" And that was my sister.
So where does your sister live?
Sorrento and Nicusp. I have 2 of them.
Yeah, I think we got a couple more questions left that I want to clear up before we kind of hit our hour. We got a couple minutes left. So one of the questions I think is really cool. If you had to predict your next 10 years, where are you and Tammy going to end up? What does it look like?
I am so excited. We are heading for another level of adventure and togetherness. And the people that we're meeting now down in California, and the TV series coming, and I hope to turn it into a lecture series. And I just see that the world is just our oyster, and we can do whatever we basically want. So I see us being completely in love like we are now. She might say differently. Just kidding, baby. I love you. And I think we're going to another level. I do. I'm so excited for everything.
So what do you think happens to Prince George? Forget about you and Tammy now. Do the exact same question. Where do you see Prince George in 10 years?
I see right now, I see property values going up. I see people moving here. I see development in the north. I see Prince George being a hub for the development of our resources, and I see it expanding. And Prince George has never really gone down in population, has never really gone up. I see it growing in size, and I see it only getting better.
And I think what's going to expedite that process, that statement, is the fact that COVID-19 hit our country, our province, our communities harder than ever this past March, and it hasn't really slowed down, especially in recent months. The number one commodity that people are looking for right now is space, and we have so much space in northern BC and a lot of room for people to come here and enjoy everything that this community and surrounding communities and areas have to offer. You've mentioned Tammy quite a few times, and I did notice that once that Citizen article went live with your story, you might have got some flack, but there's also a lot of positive comments, and a lot of those positive comments weren't just directed at you, Cam. They're directed at Tammy too, saying this is a power couple who really knows how to give back. So I just wanted to, give a quick shout out to
my
Tammy
wife. I was ready to change my life, but through her, she's the one that gave me the and I'm going to be very frank here. Tammy's vagina changed my life. We were together, and we were together, and she's just an incredible person. And I was partying, and she has a daughter who is my daughter now, Jessica. I adopted her. She's full blown my kid. I've raised her, and she said, "I can't do this anymore. I have to. Either you're going to clean up, or I'm going to go." And I've already used the word once, so I'm just going to say correctly used vagina is a very powerful tool, and she changed my life, and I cleaned up. I got better for my business. I got better for my children. I got better because I loved her. And I tell you, I quit cocaine and alcohol cold turkey the same day, and I never looked back. And that was because of the love of my wife.
Unreal. It must be almost difficult for you to look back at the trajectory of your life and think like what would have happened if you had never met Tammy or her vagina.
Oh, unbelievable. So the night we met, I was partying wide open in the leader, in the hood, and she was partying at the National. And our two bartenders, I always said to our bartenders, hey, if good looking girls come in, buy them a couple drinks, make them feel happy, because without the bar full of girls, the bar ain't happening. And they bought him drinks all right. They bought him drinks all night long on me. Oh, by me and my mother. So then Tammy and her cousin went to the generator, and I wound up at the generator. And Tammy's so beautiful, man, and I would never have talked to her because I don't talk to girls that are going to shoot me down because I never set myself up for failure. Like, what's the point? But I was having fun with these other girls and that, and I was coming off the dance floor with one of them, and she goes, "Isn't your name Cameron?" And that's all she said to me. I'm like, you talk to me? 20 minutes later, we were out of there. And then that's how, and it was, like Tammy says, that I was her first and only one night stand, and it turned into 23 years. Wow. 3 weeks later, we moved in together because she was in a really rough spot. Her ex she was in a really rough spot. And then she was fighting with one of her friends, and I said, well, just move in with me. And she's like, okay, and her and Jessica moved in. For 3 months, Jessica, my daughter, slept at the foot of our bed because her mother was come from such a wild situation with the father. He's not the father, he's the sperm donor. And the kid wouldn't leave her mother alone. And Tammy goes, what do you think of this? I said, let her sleep there. I love you, I love her. It's a package deal. So then one day, about 3 months later, Jessica goes, Mom, do you think I can have my own room? And the kid went to school and she came home and she had her own painted room and it was done. It was decorated. There was furniture. Like, it was done. She had her own room. But that's what changed my life, was meeting Tammy.
And looking back, isn't it fascinating just to think about everything that had to line up for Tammy and you to meet that night? And all the subsequent events afterwards, all the experiences and adventures and wild, crazy times that you got to embrace and enjoy together as a couple, as a unit.
Yes.
So, Cam, I think that I'm really glad that we got this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of your history, because it's definitely
it was fun.
It's one of the more colorful colorful is the phrase you're supposed to use when you say crazy. Colorful stories in Prince George. Very few people have had the life you've had. Very few people are going to have the life you're going to have over the next 10 years. That's a reflection of you and Tammy, though. But hopefully people, if they're listening, got a sense of the heart in you. You're definitely, I've always said, I think you put a quote once, I always said, you're the craziest person I know with like the biggest heart. You just shoot from the hip and you say it like it is, but your intentions are gold. Your love of people is gold, and that's where you get misinterpreted, because someone will just listen to the words coming out of your mouth and then shut down.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest mistake.
Yeah.
And
we had a dinner at our house one night, and Dave was over there. And we'd known each other for a long time. We talked, but we actually really connected that night. And he sent me a text that was very, well, you know how much it meant to me. It was just words on the phone, but I printed it off and I framed it and put it on the wall of my office. And I didn't put his name with it because I didn't know whether he wanted his name, but just what he said, it just, like, I'm getting goosebumps everywhere. It was that was a great thing, and I actually put it on my wall.
yeah,
You know, it's kind of like the old quote, what you just said, getting goosebumps. You know, it's one of my famous marketing quotes that I love. And it's, if it looks good, you'll see it. If it sounds good, you'll hear it. If it's marketed right, you'll probably buy it. But if it's real, you'll feel it. And that's where you're getting the goosebumps, just from that text that you received from Dave, which was clearly very remarkable.
And see, a lot of people judge me all the time by what Dave's saying. They don't even get close to the real me. And then when they do, they're absolutely gobsmacked. Like, we had this couple over at our old house on Upland Street, and then we had a coffee table with it was a glass, and you could lift it up and you put display underneath it. And Tammy was down working at the Leader one day, and I did this beautiful thing in there for it. And she brought tears to her when she came home. And then we have this couple over, and she's like, wow, is that ever cool? Who did that? And Tammy goes, well, Cameron did. And you could just see the look on the girl's face that she couldn't put caring and thoughtfulness with the animal. There's no way she could blend the two together. So I'm getting prejudged on my past, where you take a little time to get to know me, and things change a little bit.
I think that's true for most people, which is why we wanted you on the podcast. And so I just want to say thanks for having the guts. I know you were a little bit nervous about doing one, but thanks for having the guts to come out and expose yourself to whoever does listen to this podcast, hopefully millions of people in the future, because when you're the new Tiger King, they're all going to want to know the story.
They're going to hunt it. And I firmly believe, I was just talking to Chris before he came here, I firmly believe it's going to happen. And also, you've done a great job with Prince George, and so have you, Scott and Dave. You both have done wonderful things. So there's nothing can stop us.
So I think we should end this podcast with some rapid fire questions. We've never done that before. Something new.
I don't have a rapid fire question.
Well, I'll kick off 4 or 5, and then you follow up with a few of your own. So no pressure, Dave. Think of some. So Cam, here we go. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite city outside of Prince George in BC?
Palm Springs, California.
In British Columbia?
Vernon.
Ooh, good answer. Favorite and most inspirational Canadian?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Gonna have to go with Ham Hughes, I guess, right off the top of my head.
Beauty answer. Favorite charity to support?
I think the Salvation Army reaches a lot of people.
Favorite country outside of Canada?
Gonna lean towards the United States, I guess. It's a little rough down there right now, but I enjoy it down there.
It's a beautiful country. Dave?
Favorite person in Prince George, BC?
My wife.
Your favorite hobby? What do you love to do more than anything?
Go into my basement and play old school arcade games. I built a whole arcade in my basement. I have pinballs, asteroids, Defender, Pac-Man, and every day I go down there and I go right back into grade 9.
Okay, and if you could give one piece of advice for our listeners, what would that piece of advice be? That's the final question.
Never judge a book by its cover. Always be kind to your fellow man. And no act of kindness is too small. A smile, $5. Just make the world a better place and don't tear people down. You imagine if people didn't tear people down and they used all their negativity for good?
Yeah. Thank you, Cameron Thun.
Man, I never thought that I'd be saying stuff like that.
Peace out.
That's awesome.
Cam, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I was a little nervous, but you guys make it great, and it was a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
There you go.